In the world of martial arts, few names carry as much weight as Bruce Lee. But beneath the surface of his legendary status lies a shocking truth about the extreme methods that forged his extraordinary abilities. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the dangerous and revolutionary training techniques that made Bruce Lee a legend. At just 135 pounds, Bruce Lee possessed strength that seemed to defy physics. His power-to-weight ratio was extraordinary, leading many to question how someone so lean could generate such explosive force. The answer lies in training methods so intense that they would make modern fitness experts nervous. Historical clips of Lee training.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Lee broke away from traditional martial arts doctrine in a controversial move that would change combat sports forever. While other martial artists avoided weight training, believing it would make them slow and inflexible, Lee embraced it. But with a twisted innovation that was uniquely his own. Lee's training philosophy was built on 4 dangerous pillars. 1. Maximum force generation through extreme isometrics. 2nd, explosive speed training at the edge of human capability. 3. Unconventional strength development. 4th, brutal endurance conditioning. But what made these methods truly revolutionary was how he combined them into a single, punishing system. Demonstration of isometric exercises. One of Lee's most controversial methods was his revolutionary approach to isometric training, pushing the boundaries of what many thought possible. He would spend grueling hours pushing against immovable objects with maximum force, attempting to engage every single muscle fiber in his body. This technique, while remarkably effective for building strength.
Well, this brings up something. You were in one of Bruce Lee's great movies.
Return of the Dragon.
Return of the Dragon.
Yeah.
And this is a famous, famous fight scene that you had with Bruce Lee.
I still consider it a classic.
It
today.
holds
It's
up. I
amazing.
watched it today, and you know they've advanced fight scenes so much, but this really holds up. It's an amazing fight scene.
Well, I think the main reason, Bruce was really ahead of his time. And I worked out with Bruce Lee, and I worked out for 3 years. That's when I held the world title. And then he went to Hong Kong to pursue his movie career, did a couple movies, very successful. So he called me up and said, you know, I want to do a movie with a fight scene that everyone will remember called Return of the Dragon. He said, would you come over and do the fight scene with me? I said, well, do I have to lose? He says, yeah, you have to lose. So I said, all right. So I went over there, and you know, I'd seen his first 2 movies. I said, you know, the guys you fight don't even have a chance. I mean, they don't even touch you, you know. And he said, no, we'll make this a seesaw battle. And so we made it fight back and forth, and it became a classic.
That was unusual at the time, because in that fight scene, you knock him down a few times, and it's pretty close, and he didn't allow that, did he?
No, I was the only one ever to really do that, you know, fighting. But again, you know, he respected me because of my ability as a world champion at the time.
Carried serious risks of tissue damage and nervous system fatigue that would make modern trainers hesitate. The intensity of Lee's isometric training was almost frightening to witness. He would push against concrete walls relentlessly until his muscles visibly trembled and shook, far beyond what most would consider the point of failure. During these sessions, he'd hold strenuous positions until complete muscular failure occurred, often pushing through the burning sensation that would cause others to stop. Perhaps most daringly, he would attempt to lift what he knew were impossible weights, engaging in what he called overcoming isometrics, applying maximum force against an immovable object. This method wasn't just about physical strength. It was about pushing past mental barriers that typically limit human performance. Lee believed that by forcing his muscles to work against unmovable resistance, he could recruit more muscle fibers than traditional training methods allowed.
Before I let you go, we are approaching the 40th anniversary that involved one Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Put that photo up. And I want to ask the captain about this photo almost 40 years later. Tell me, what do you recall about this almost 40 years ago?
Oh, that's my first trip to Hong Kong with my good friend Bruce Lee. He said, come on, we're going to make a movie. You can be the villain. I said, sure. Why not? And I flew over to Hong Kong, and I was the villain. And that ended up being the last movie that he made.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great photo, though.
Oh, yeah, it was fun working with Bruce. He was a great guy.
Would often incorporate these isometric holds into his regular training, creating a unique hybrid system that challenged his body in ways that hadn't been seen before in martial arts training. The risk of injury was always present, but Lee believed the potential benefits outweighed the dangers, even though this method of training placed enormous stress on his nervous system and connective tissues. Speed training techniques of Bruce Lee. Lee's speed training methods were particularly alarming even by today's advanced training standards. He believed in pushing his movements to superhuman velocities, often training at speeds that made his contemporaries nervous about the risk of serious injury. His approach to speed development was revolutionary but dangerous, combining elements that most trainers would hesitate to put together. At the core of his speed training was an almost obsessive focus on explosive power. He would practice punches with explosive resistance, using specialized equipment and rubber bands to create tension that fought against his lightning-fast strikes. This wasn't just about throwing fast punches. Lee would perform every exercise at maximum velocity, whether it was bodyweight movements, weight training, or martial arts techniques. He believed that training at anything less than maximum speed was a waste of precious training time. What made his speed training even more intense was his use of weighted clothing during these high-velocity drills. While others might use weights for strength training, Lee would wear them during speed work, creating a dangerous but effective combination that forced his muscles to adapt to both resistance and velocity simultaneously. Perhaps most remarkably, he would train multiple muscle groups at high speeds simultaneously, coordinating complex movements that challenged both his nervous system and muscular control. This integrated approach to speed training was years ahead of its time, but it came with significant risks that modern sports science has only recently begun to understand. The 1965 fight with Wong Jack Man marked a dramatic turning point in Lee's training approach. After this legendary confrontation, Lee realized his conditioning needed to reach even more extreme levels. This led to a complete overhaul of his training methods, pushing him to gain 25 pounds of muscle while maintaining his legendary speed. Lee's daily training routine was nothing short of punishing, stretching from early morning until late evening in a relentless pursuit of martial arts perfection. His day would begin at the crack of dawn, with the morning session running from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. This grueling start included a challenging 5-mile run while wearing a weighted vest, pushing his cardiovascular system to its limits before most people had even started their day. Following this, he would dedicate 2 intense hours to technical martial arts practice, meticulously refining his movements and techniques. The morning session would continue with an hour of specialized strength training, culminating in core conditioning exercises performed until complete muscle failure. The afternoon session, running from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., focused on explosive power and speed development. During these hours, Lee would engage in intensive speed training drills, followed by power development exercises that pushed the boundaries of human performance. He would then move on to skill-specific practice, honing the techniques that would later become legendary in martial arts circles. The afternoon would conclude with his notorious isometric training, where he would push his muscles to their absolute limits through static holds and resistance work. As evening approached, rather than winding down, Lee would begin his final training block from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. This session took on a more holistic approach, combining additional physical conditioning with mental development. He would engage in supplementary conditioning work, followed by dedicated mental training sessions. The evening would also include deep philosophical study, as Lee believed that mental acuity was just as important as physical prowess. The day would conclude with technique refinement, where he would perfect the movements and combinations he had practiced earlier, often working well into the night to achieve the precision he demanded of himself. What set Lee apart was his scientific approach to training. He studied anatomy, physics, and biomechanics to understand how to push human performance to its absolute limits. He maintained detailed records of his experiments with different training methods, often using himself as a test subject for dangerous new techniques. Perhaps no exercise better exemplifies Lee's extreme approach than the dragon flag. This core exercise, which he helped popularize, requires extraordinary strength and control. Lying back on a bench, supporting only the upper shoulders, the entire body is raised and lowered as one rigid unit, a move that tests the absolute limits of human core strength. Lee's cardiovascular training was equally intense. He developed a system that combined high-intensity interval training, weighted endurance work, combat-specific conditioning, progressive overload principles. He structured his cardio like boxing rounds, but with a crucial difference. He would gradually increase both the intensity and duration, pushing his heart and lungs to their absolute limits. Bruce Lee's approach transcended mere physical training, embracing a comprehensive fusion of Eastern philosophy and Western psychology. However, modern sports medicine has identified serious risks in his methods, including nervous system burnout, joint damage, and cardiovascular strain. Today's athletes have wisely modified his techniques, incorporating structured progression systems, improved recovery protocols, and scientific monitoring. Despite these risks, Lee's revolutionary methods transformed martial arts forever. His willingness to break traditional boundaries while merging physical and mental disciplines created the foundation for modern mixed martial arts and cross-training approaches, cementing his lasting legacy in combat sports. Bruce Lee's training secrets reveal both the potential and dangers of pushing human limits. While his methods produced extraordinary results, they came with significant risks. His legacy teaches us that greatness often requires walking a dangerous line between innovation and recklessness. What do you think about Bruce Lee's extreme training methods? Would you try any of these techniques? Share your thoughts in the comments below.